Join us here with Coffee and News with Doc and Jenny. Coffee and News is a part of the Amateur Radio Network. Introducing Doc and Jenny after this. We got the conversation started.
Are you ready?
Yeah, we're back. We're on air. We're talking about name recognition and
Yeah.
status quo. Like your last name, your surname is an interesting topic. It's like it goes. It's not just genealogy. It's what it means. And go ahead. You fill in the rest there,
Yeah.
Doc.
Well, I'd like to speak about what's in a name and how do you get your last name. Most of us don't have a thing to say about our last name or our first name. We're born, somebody else gives you your first and last name. They might be your biological parents, they might be your adoptive parents, whatever. But you're stuck with it. That's it. And then some of us, things happen throughout our life that change that. And I'll give you an example. In my case, I played Doc Holliday in Tombstone, Arizona. And the reason I did that was to get an engineering job when I was in my 50s, and the resume thing wasn't working, and I came up with a novel idea. And I got into fist fights in the streets of Tombstone and dealing with tense situations because I portrayed Dr. John Henry Holliday and what he did for a living at the gambling table. Well, the people of Tombstone stopped calling me by George Finella, and they would only refer to me as Doc Holliday, which was a symbol of honor for them to do that because this was their greatest hero in that town. So they said you needed a new name for a new life because they knew my background, aerospace engineering, and here I am fist fighting on the streets of Tombstone in defense of their hero, John Henry Holliday. So I became known as Doc Holliday from then on. That was about 25 years ago. And I have carried that name. Most people in this area of the country don't know me by any other name than Doc Holliday unless I go to court or something for my daughter, But my Western name is Doc Holliday. And most of my friends, associates know no other name for me. And they call me Doc. And I take that as an honor. But in that case, you might say I earned that name.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you're given a name by your friends because maybe you're short and they call you Shorty, or you have curly hair and they call you Curly. Or maybe, you don't take a bath often enough and they call you Stinky. Who knows? A lot of out here in the West, it's almost mandatory that you're going to get a nickname one way or the other. You're going to do something.
It's kind of interesting you pointed something out is that they didn't really know who you were, so they identified you with Doc Holliday, and it's because you didn't grow up in that area. A lot of people probably are they're like that in the Midwest and the West Coast.
Right, they are, and that's one aspect of it. But it becomes your identity, and you live up to it. And since I'm Doc Holliday, I have to carry myself much as Doc Holliday, or I think from my studies, would carry himself. So, for example, when I went into court to battle for my visitations with my daughter, before before I went before the judge, I would always say to myself, what would Doc do in this situation? And then I had the courage, and my knees stopped knocking, to go before a judge and fight four attorneys in two states by myself without representation. Because Doc was a cool character. He had no back door. He had no fear of anything because he was dying. And the one thing that defined Doc Holliday was he had ice water in his veins. He was courageous above anything else. He was skilled with a gun and a knife, but he was still courageous. He faced any situation with absolute courage, whereas most people had a degree of fear in them when they get into tough situations. So I tended to live up to that name no matter where I was at and what I was doing, and everybody kind of knew me as that way, that this is a guy that would not, no retreat, no regret, no backing down of any kind, no reserve, no regret, no retreat, Doc Holliday. So
you basically got rerouted in the Arizona. Like, I mean, it
right.
saddens me because of what you went through, and at the same time, I'm thrilled at the idea that you found an identity of who you want to be or become something of it.
Think of it this way too, Jenny. Here I am. I'm not resting on my laurels as Doc Holliday out here in the West, living out the rest of my life as Doc. I'm fighting for my father's last name.
Yeah.
I'm going back to the fact when I was born, when given that name, that I'm not satisfied that it was dishonored by that stupid place they called Bar. It was more than that cruel and stupid place.
It's redemption.
Hospital. And I'm willing to go back and risk everything. The life I have out here, my Doc Holliday status, and say my name proudly I'm proclaiming is George Paul Piniella, son of George Stephen Piniella, because there is something in the last name worthwhile. And that name, Piniella, is an honorable name. I want to give you an example.
Okay.
Can I do that?
Sure.
If my name were George Ferrari, oh my God, everybody would, first thing they would say is, are you related to the famous car maker Ferrari? The man who invented and built the most beautiful, technologically advanced, fastest race cars? Ferrari is a symbol of utter excellence. If your last name is Ferrari, you are a wow person. Now, can you imagine, though, when Mr. Ferrari, before he was famous, was growing up maybe in America, and somebody said, there's little Joey Ferrari. Oh, what an odd Italian-sounding name, and probably would look down on him. But he grew into a man, created the Ferrari Automobile Company, which is a symbol of excellence. Now, that's how it can be with the Pinellas. The Pinella name is kind of disparaged, is an ethnic sounding. What is that? Italian? Whatever, And everybody kind of looks at it like, brother, Well, I want to make it to where me and my son can say, my name is Piniella, and let me tell you about a proud people.
Well,
that's my goal.
I think I can relate to what you're saying because a little background on the coffee, amazing and full body, is that my mom was drinking coffee, and my mom had a coffee shop in 1986, and I just wanted my mom to have some redemption. So instead of it failing, I just turned it into a radio show. And I don't know if it's a lose or fail anything, or it's what you invest into the people around you. Because, like, to me, I invest into you. I invest into my mom. I invest into the coffee show. Because that's what it is. It's coffee with Doc and Jenny. And we decided to size it down and enjoy a book review and kind of relax and talk about things that do matter to us. Like this, having redemption is important to be vindicated after living the life you used to live. It's like you're who you are, not because of what people tell you. You're who you are because you created something out of your life. You just like God, when God formed us in our mother's womb, he formed us with a purpose. Like he wants us to know what purpose feels like. So if that's what gives you purpose, and God blesses it, you know how you're blessed when you start seeing people happy, you start seeing a smile on their face, and they enjoy that. And that's what you said about that town. It's like they embraced you as their own, and in Tombstone, Arizona. So that's an awesome story, by the way. I love it.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of more awesome stories. Two of my four children that were born not in the eastern part of the United States are born out west here. One in California, my son, and one in Arizona, my daughter. His name is Eric Dean Winterhawk Vanilla. Her name is Cheyenne Autumn Winterhawk Vanilla. Now those are powerful names, and both of those try to live up to the power in those names, because each one of those names symbolize something powerful in our American history. I don't know if you know the story of Cheyenne Autumn, the movie, the struggle of the Northern Cheyenne to be free.
No, I
Winter
don't.
Hawk is another fantastic movie about a noble Indian chief. And of course, now I'm trying to rejuvenate and resuscitate, rescue the name Fenella, so that name also will take its place in honor, and they will try to live up to those names, and it will make them a better person all the way around, because they always carry that. When they sign that name, they go, damn, I got a lot to live up to. This is not an ordinary name. When my son or daughter sign their name, believe me, people stop and look. I know when my son was small, we would take him to the doctor's office when he was like a year or two old, and the nurse would come out like they do in the lobby, and he's Eric Winterhawk. And everybody in the room would stop what they were doing and look, who the hell is this kid named Eric Winterhawk?
It's
Because
beautiful too.
it was such a name that grabbed your attention. What is this kid gonna have a war bonnet on or what?
It's a beautiful name too.
Because his mother was native. She was Lakota, and she of course had the Lakota look, and she got this blonde-haired, blue-eyed little son named Eric Winterhawk. So they are looking at her and him, and they used to think she kidnapped him or something, because his name and his looks was like blonde. He had blonde hair till he was about 3 or 4, and they had blue eyes. So later the hair turned brown and the eyes turned brown. But with the first couple of years of his life, 3 years, he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little boy named Eric Winterhawk. So I know the power of a last name and a first name. It isn't just the last name.
And obviously the gene pool, because my dad had blonde hair and blue. I think my dad had blonde hair and blue eyes too. And I
Yeah.
was just telling you, George, that how much your daughters look like my sisters. It's kind of obvious that they're family.
I'm telling you. Well, our grandfather, I think on the day he died, he still had a head full of brown hair, even when as old as he was. He must have been 80-something when he
Wow.
died. But that was one of the things that we used to marvel at growing up. This guy never went gray. He had a head full of dark hair.
Yeah, my dad was
And
the same way.
I don't know if you remember that, but he never got gray hair, even into his 80s. It's so unusual and amazing, and he never lost his hair. It was full head of dark brown hair.
Well, our segment's almost coming to an end, but we have we've about a minute here. I really enjoyed the history lesson. Like, really, it goes into how people recognize people by their surname. They might not know. Like, Smith is a very common name, a commoners.
Right.
Like, when I
Yeah.
wanted to tell you about our last name Stish, it's tied to royalty, royal family, countess and countesses. So we have a royal heritage in Poland.
All right, I'll tell you something else, Jenny. There's an awful lot of Afro-American people that come from Polish mothers or Polish fathers or Eastern, and you never, I mean never, meet an African-American with a name like Wazowski or Kowalski, because they are taught not to be proud European. So
Uh,
no black person you will ever meet. I challenge you to find a black person with an Eastern or a Central European last name, even though they may be half Czech, half Polish, or half Russian. They will hide that, and they will have a name like Washington or
no
whatever.
kidding.
Because is that because there's something about a last name, and they know damn well they would be rejected in their community if they went around as John Slabowski rather than John Washington or whatever, you know?
Well, I think that's
And
why that
so,
registry is so important. Like when anytime a pedophile's name is in a registry, that is you're it could go either way. Like name recognition can be a real awful place to be, and they have it
yeah.
there for a reason. Like if your dad really was who he was, then they would have to apologize to the thousands of families that
Oh, yeah.
also went through what you went through. So I think that
Exactly.
the story of your last name, there's going to be an acknowledgement, and I know that that acknowledgement is going to be legitimate. And I think we have
My
already
dad,
started that process. So I think you're already seeing the healing happening.
uh, my
I
dad was a hero. My dad was a hero for
very
doing
much,
the unendurable. And
very
that
much,
last name he carried is an honorable name that stands for courage, resistance, which he was. He was a fighter and a resistor. The one thing they used to call us a fighting Finellas because if we were scrappy, and we still are to this day. There is something in that gene pool. Anybody with a name Fenella, one way or another, learns how to fight. Whether you fight in court, or fight with your fists on the school ground, or you in any other way, you. These are not people who are shrinking violets.
if he
These are
was who
people.
he was, George,
Say
he wouldn't
say
have been
again.
transferred to the veterans. If he would
That's
have
right.
received a dishonorable discharge, he would never have been able to go to the VA and do the things he did. He died honorably. And that's
Right.
very important to be a military soldier, or else he would have never been accepted and got out of the place that he got out of. And that's the miracle of the story is that once you have that document in your hands, I think it'll resonate with you much more. And I know
Right.
that story
Right.
because really there's something in it's called the Stolen Valor Act. If he had no valor, they would not let him in the VA. You
You're
know.
right, Jenny. You're absolutely right.
So your dad died. Your dad died at the VA, and he was more than what most people would allowed him to be. He wouldn't have allowed. He wasn't allowed to have the life he was supposed to have. He was supposed to be there for your graduation. Instead, they did things to your dad at Farview Hospital. Now we have it documented, and we got the story and the book to resonate with it. And we're going to have the paperwork from the Justice Department because they did an investigation on Farview. And it's sickening what you had to go through. And you've been
Well,
redeemed in so many ways. And I want to say this we have about 1 second left.
my father was a fighting Fenella, and that is what they could not stomp him into the ground, so they lobotomized him, and that's because
Go ahead.
you know. Yeah, my father was probably the fighting Fenella in that place, probably always asking, protesting, fighting back no matter how much he was beaten up, abused. And after a while, they threw their hands up in frustration and said, we're going to chemically lobotomize this guy. We'll never defeat him any other way. So they played dirty with him and destroyed his brain and his will to fight. But the other men, they just sat in the corner, beat him up once or twice, and they were beaten puppies, beaten down, and they would submit, be good slave laborers, and do what they were told.
Yeah.
I have a feeling my dad was not one of those.
Yeah. Well, they for him to be lobotomized, that just tells you how horrific this whole ordeal has been. And it's coming, this chapter has come to a close. And now we're going to have the paperwork, the books, and everything in front of us. And we have the investigation. And thank you, Sage Publishing in Thousand Oaks, California, to verify that report and research in June 2002. we're going to end the program here. Thank you, Doc. It's always nice coffee and more with us here at our YouTube page. Click like and subscribe, please. Thank you. Doc, you have the
And
last word.
thank you, Jenny. As my song says, that girl is a cowboy, and we both know what that means, right?
That's right. I yeah, Garth Brooks, a Garth Brooks song. I'll have to check it out.
You
Okay,
are
Doc,
definitely
you
the
do have the
real
last word.
deal.
So, any final thoughts here? You got like 30 seconds
Yeah,
here.
I would just say that Jenny, you are the real deal. You are a girl, a daughter of the West, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
You have it in your blood. If you were out here, you would be a butt-kicking cowgirl riding a fast horse named Wildfire, running the barrels or running for rodeo queen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
You
could
got
see
the
myself
style
doing
and
that. Yeah.
you know,
The only way
and
that would happen, Doc, is that I had to live in the Midwest and I had to learn the way things are done there because it's not done the same way here on the East Coast.
well, you know what you got to have fundamentally is you got to have courage, Jenny, and everything else can be taught to you. And you have courage in spades, and you have intelligence, and you have the right stuff all the way around.
That's right.
I don't have any doubt you'd make it fine out here.
Well, I tell you, I mean, I am very tempted to go out there, and I want to get my ticket as soon as I can. So, as soon as I get a chance to get to Globe, Arizona, I will get there.
Amen.
All
We'll be
right.
glad to
Oh,
have you.
yeah.
You're
Okay.
always welcome. Jenny, you're always welcome around my campfire, I'll tell you that.
That's right. So, what do we say? Adios, everyone, from now.
Adios, amigos. We ride for the border.
All right. Thank you for enjoying coffee with Doc and Jenny. God bless and God bless America.